Hey everybody, Chris Maxwell the Eco Dweeb. I'm here today to present a very special episode that is dedicated to the students at Fuller Magnet Elementary School here in Raleigh, North Carolina. 181 years ago, a French physicist named Edmond Becquerel discovered this thing called the photoelectric effect. He discovered that certain materials produce a small amount of electric current whenever sunlight passes through them. 115 years after that discovery, Bell Labs here in the United States developed the first commercially viable solar panel in 1954. A year and a half before the space race began, on April 25, 1954, electrical engineer Darrell Chapin, physicist Gerald Pearson, and chemist Calvin Fuller demonstrated the first practical solar cell. The cell was made of two silicon wafers, each with a special coating to make the wafer either positive or negative. When sunlight passes through the cell, it emits a direct current, or DC, electricity. Bell Labs didn't hesitate to show off their new space-age technology. A year and a half after the initial demonstration, Bell Labs made the world's first solar-powered phone call near Americus, Georgia. 3 years after that call, NASA sent its first solar-powered satellite into space, the grapefruit-sized Vanguard 1. Through the 1950s and 1960s, NASA was a household name. NASA's use of solar influenced America's perception about the viability of the technology. By the end of the space race in the 1960s, solar-powered consumer merchandise was making its way to market. But the energy crisis of the 1970s focused America's attention on domestic sources of energy, and President Carter's bet was on solar. In 1977, he proposed a tax credit for solar installations, and in 1979, he installed 32 solar panels on the roof of the White House to demonstrate that even historic buildings can incorporate renewable technologies to improve their energy efficiency. Solar technology has continued to evolve and become incorporated into everything from calculators to cars. Today I'm going to perform a solar experiment using gear that you can buy at REI. I have a Goal Zero solar panel, which is feeding up to 100 watts of DC power into this 1 kilowatt hour Goal Zero battery bank. The Goal Zero battery has an inverter that can convert the DC electricity into alternating current, or AC electricity, which is the type of power that is used in your home. You lose some energy converting from DC to AC. This battery holds 1,045 watt-hours of DC power. Assuming the standard 10% loss in conversion, only 940 watts of AC power will be delivered from the electrical outlets on the front of this battery. To demonstrate this, I'm going to calculate the energy lost while charging this fully electric 2017 Energica EVA motorcycle using the Goal Zero battery and solar panel. This motorcycle is not a prototype. It is a production vehicle that you can purchase from a dealership here in Raleigh. Energica builds race bikes for the FIM Moto E World Cup Race Series, which celebrated its inaugural run in 2019. They make some of the most advanced motorcycles in the world. But enough about that. It's time to get this experiment started. I'll begin by recording the states of charge, 100% for the Goal Zero and 63% for the Energica. Next, I'll calculate the energy stored in each device. I devised a simple and possibly flawed formula to approximate the energy stored in the Goal Zero and the Energica. Capacity times state of charge equals available energy. Before the charging session, the Goal Zero had a capacity of 1,045 watt-hours times 100% state of charge equals 1,045 watt-hours available before the charge. The Energica has 11,700 watt-hours of capacity times a 63% state of charge equals 7,370 watt-hours available before the charge. Now, I'll let the Energica charge for 2 hours and 39 minutes, bringing the Energica state of charge up to 67% and the Goal Zero down to 62%. I use the simple and possibly flawed formula again to determine the amount of energy stored in the Goal Zero and the Energica after the charging session. For the Goal Zero, 1,045 watt-hours times 62% state of charge equals 648 watt-hours available after the charging session. The Energica started with 11,750 watt-hours of capacity times 67% state of charge equals 7,839 watt-hours of available energy after the charging session. Now it's time to calculate the energy sent from the goal zero and the energy received by the Energica. To calculate the energy for the goal zero, I subtracted the available watt-hours after the charging session from the available watt-hours before the charging session. For the goal zero, that's 1,045 watt-hours minus 648 watt-hours equals 397 transferred watt-hours. To calculate the energy received by the Energica motorcycle, I use the formula in reverse. Available watt-hours after charge minus available watt-hours before charge equals received energy. For the Energica, that was 7,839 watt-hours available after the charge minus 7,371 watt-hours before the charge, which equals 469 watt-hours transferred to the motorcycle. Reviewing this data, there is a 72 watt discrepancy between the goal zero's calculated output and the energy that was received by the Energica. I have a theory that the goal zero's output display doesn't meter solar input that is consumed directly by the AC inverter. It only reports energy being distributed from the battery. This would explain the 72 watt discrepancy between the goal zero's calculated output and the energy that was received by the Energica. My current assumption is that the Energica received 72 watts of pure solar energy during this experiment. Now, the efficiency loss. The Energica should have received 240 watts per hour of charging, but it received an average of 177 watts per hour of charging, making the estimated energy loss from the multiple AC-DC conversions 26%, which is 16% higher than the normal rate of loss. This could indicate that the AC inverter on the goal zero may be very inefficient, or it could mean that the Energica's inverter is very inefficient when charging at such a low amperage. Further testing must be done to fully understand the actual loss during the AC-DC conversion. This concludes my experiment. I am compelled to tell you that the method I used to determine the energy stored in the goal zero and Energica is a flawed method. Different batteries measure different values to determine the indicated state of charge. The only true way to validate the capacity times state of charge equals available energy formula is to fully deplete and fully recharge the battery several times using tools to monitor the voltage of the battery in relation to the indicated state of charge. Regardless, the scientific method was deployed to better understand the loss of energy during AC-DC conversion. What I did today was unfathomable in 1950. Solar power as we know it didn't exist, and neither did electric motorcycles. But 4 years later, the idea was plausible. Technology develops quickly, and we are in the midst of an energy transition like none other. With the ability to power your home from its battery during a power failure, and the ability to be charged for free by the sun, the coming era of electric vehicles will revolutionize how people think about and use energy. One day, I believe, we will have solar paint technology that will be capable of fully charging an electric vehicle while parked in the sun. Sounds crazy, right? Well, FaceTime was a crazy idea in 1993. I was 10 years old then, and that same year, AT&T predicted the world we live in today with a series of advertisements called You Will, each one showing a future technology that we take for granted today. I picked out 8 of the ads that have come true to share with you. As a future technology is presented in the ad, a logo for the modern-day equivalent will appear to the left and right side of the video. I hope you enjoy, and remember, the power is yours.
Have you ever paid a toll without slowing down? Across the country,
Gesture ahead. Take next.
without stopping for directions,
101.
or tucked your baby in from a phone booth. Have you ever watched the movie you wanted to, the minute you wanted to, learn special things?
That's all taken from jazz.
Know any questions? From faraway places.
Oakland?
So where did jazz come from?
Good question.
Have you ever kept an eye on your home when you're not at home? Or Or gotten a phone call
How was your day?
on your wrist.
Beautiful.
So this is where we stand on the atrium.
Or attended a meeting
really like what you guys have been doing, but
in your bare feet.
I may have a few other ideas.
You will. And the company that'll bring it to you, AT&T.